everybody. Welcome to Moms on a Mission. Today's show is sponsored by our good friends at MyPillow. MyPillow makes the best pillows, slippers, sheets, and so much more. I have to tell you, I really love what Mike Lindell is doing with MyPillow. He is such a patriot. We had a chance to meet him, and he makes the best quality products at affordable prices. I mean, the sheets, the towels, the slippers we love.
When Julie and I met Mike Lindell, Julie might have told him that she wears her slippers to the movie theater. So
he loved that.
She's pretty proud of it.
I really did. I was lying. It was true.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome.
Yeah. So go to the website, which is go to mypillow.com and use the code MISSION to get up to 66% off. That's code MISSION, mypillow.com. And we'd also love to hear from you. Email us at moms@momsonamission.net. That's moms@momsonamission.net. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite platform.
Today, we are so honored to have a courageous, godly 12-time All-American swimmer, spokeswoman for the International Women's Forum, who unapologetically speaks the truth regarding the protection of biological women competing in sports, even at the risk of putting herself in harm's way. She has relentlessly stood for truth and science. Just like Rosa Parks, she will undoubtedly go down in history for taking a bold stand to protect women's rights. Please welcome to Moms on a Mission, Riley Gaines.
Hey, Riley.
Oh my gosh. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited. So thank you, guys.
Well, thank you for joining us today. And I have to plug for my daughter. She wanted me to tell you that you're all over her Instagram feed and you're one of her heroes. And she's also she's a 14-year-old athlete. So I had to get that plug in right away. So, so moving on, just wanted to kind of tell us a little bit of your story. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. So I recently graduated from the University of Kentucky. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, but I was very fortunate to be pretty heavily recruited in high school, going to college. And so I am biased. I knew I wanted to stay in the SEC. My dad, he was an SEC football player. My mom, she played softball. All my family played in the SEC. And so I knew I wanted to be here. But really, ultimately, I thought I was going to be a Florida Gator. I took my trip there and it just didn't feel like home. I took a trip to University of Kentucky thinking nothing of it at the time. They weren't a good swimming school, but it was close to home. I went, but ultimately I fell in love. I fell in love with the university, the coaches, the team, the resources they provided, not just for athletics, but also academics. And I ultimately committed there. And looking back now, I realized that was entirely God's doing. I couldn't be more grateful for my experience there. I'll kind of give you guys a background on what it looks like to be a collegiate swimmer. First of all, I started swimming when I was 4 years old, and I was 22 when I graduated. And so I dedicated 18 years of my life to my sport, which of course includes, your swimming training, but also weightlifting, also your diet, also your sleep schedule, your physical rehabilitation, not to mention the social sacrifices that you have to make to compete at that level. You don't get to go on vacation with your family. You don't get to have sleepovers with your friends on Friday night because guess what? You have practice at 6 a.m. on Saturdays. When you're in college, you don't get to come home for Christmas or summer or Thanksgiving. You're stuck at school training. And so it's impossible to put into words the amount of dedication that it takes. That being said, really what's kind of brought me to light in regards to what I've been fighting for, my senior year at the University of Kentucky, I had made it my goal to win a national title, which would of course mean becoming the fastest female swimmer in the country in my respective event. And I was right on pace to do so. Middle of my senior year, I was ranked third in the nation behind one amazing female swimmer who I knew very well, but one person who was leading the country in multiple events that I had never heard of before, which is really bizarre because like in most sports, your top tier athletes, of each other, regardless of where you compete. Even if you don't know each other on a personal level, you know each other's names, but this Leah Thomas name, we had never heard of before. No one had, none of my teammates, not my coach. So lots of red flags there. And it wasn't until any of this made sense until a few days after these nation leading times were posted, an article came out disclosing very briefly that Leah Thomas was formerly Will Thomas and swam the men's team at University of Pennsylvania before deciding to switch to the women's team. And so when I read this, I was so shocked. Of course, we all were. But truthfully, I felt this sense of relief because I was able to look up who Will Thomas was. Which what we found was that Will Thomas was a mediocre male at best, ranking 462nd in the nation among the men, to again now trailing the women. And that's why I say I felt relieved, because I thought the NCAA would see it how I saw it, how we all saw it, how anyone with a brain would see this. But that's not how the NCAA saw it. They saw absolutely nothing wrong with allowing Thomas to compete with the women, which is ultimately the decision they decided to allow this. That first day of competition, we watched as Leah Thomas swam to a national title, beating every girl in the entire country by body lengths. The second day of competition was the day that Thomas and I raced each other in the 200 freestyle, which ultimately resulted in a tie. We went the exact same time down to the 100th of a second, which again, ties happen in swimming, but they're really rare. And so this is entirely God's doing. I think
I believe that.
He put me, I do too, wholeheartedly. I think he put me in this position for a reason. And so we tied, and we go behind the awards podium where the NCAA official looks at both Thomas, who is 6'4" and towering over me, and myself, and says, "Great job, but you guys tied, and we don't really account for ties, so Leah takes the trophy home." And so I was taken aback by this, of course, and I questioned this, and I say, "Okay, we tied. Why are you adamant on giving this trophy to Thomas? What was the thought process here?" And the official says, "Well, Leah has to have the trophy for photo purposes. So you can pose with this one, but you have to give it back. You go home empty-handed. Thomas takes the trophy." And that's ultimately what thrusted me into this position of no longer willing to lie. After facing that, after seeing how this affected my teammates and my competitors and every girl at that meet, I knew someone had to stick up for us. I just thought it would be an adult. I thought it would be a coach or a parent or someone with political power or someone within the NCAA. I thought that's who would be sticking up for us, but no one was. And that's when it hit me that if we as female athletes weren't willing to stick up for ourselves, we shouldn't expect others to stick up for us. This has to come from within to a certain degree. And so that's what thrusted me over the edge. And really, that's what I've been talking about this past year.
What went through your mind? Was it just an immediate, like, I'm standing up for truth? And, or was there a little bit of a dialogue going on inside your mind before you stood up?
There was by no means was I ever really, I kind of weighed the consequences. I was trying to get into grad school at the time. I was worried about that, but I immediately called my athletic director. Of course, I talked to my family and they were very supportive, and my teammates and my coach, but I called my athletic director at the University of Kentucky. His name is Mitch Barnhart. We have a great relationship. And so I called him and I said, "Hey, this is what happened, and this is how we feel. How do you feel if I take a public stance and acknowledging this is wrong?" And he just responded back with, "Riley, I love you. I would support you no matter how you stood, but I want you to stay true to your convictions, speak your heart, and never worry about painting this university in a bad light. We're behind you." And so at the time, I didn't think anything of it. I thought that's how any athletic director would talk to their student athlete. And I could not be more wrong about that assumption. I quickly came to realize. So I was very fortunate to have the support of everyone around me. There was no one at that time who was trying to silence me, which I realized how unique that is, which again is why I say it's just a God thing that I ended up at the University of Kentucky. And I had an athletic director who was so supportive. I haven't talked to one other student at any university across the NCAA who's had that same experience.
That's sad.
Very sad. But it makes me so happy that your athletic director, and I wrote his name down to remember it so we can give him kudos, Mitch Barnhart. Is that what you said? I mean,
yes.
Thank you for him for being courageous and doing the right thing and supporting you. So I feel I have warm fuzzies about University of Kentucky now.
Yeah, I'm going to send my kid there.
Yeah.
He'll have to pray about it. But I just think this is so important for moms and women and just any American to realize that sometimes when you're in a battle, it's because God has called you to take a stand, and he doesn't necessarily call the equipped, but he equips the called. And I just think that right down to you selecting university, to the fact that you tied with a biological male, which kudos to you. You're stinking awesome. Like, that's impressive that you swam that fast. I'm not going to lie. Like,
my husband was a former swimmer and high school swimmer, like state, I don't know, maybe got 10th, which is pretty good. But he was telling me, he said he loves to watch swimming, men's, women's, but he's of course been appalled, but he just has always been so complimentary of women swimmers because of their hard work ethic. He said, no one swims harder than the women I've seen all the way growing up. And I know that was your mantra. You worked so hard for this. And then to have a male come in that has more muscle, more lung capacity, and pretend to be equal. It's illogical. Let's just be honest. It is.
Yeah.
Totally.
So
you're absolutely right.
How did you feel when that happened? When you're sitting here and they're giving, instead of nobody having the trophy, and even competing against a biological man is illogical. But I mean, how did you feel when that happened?
I think there was a lot of feelings, but I think the most prominent feelings I felt were betrayal. I felt as if we had been utterly betrayed. The NCAA, the Biden administration, the people who once pushed feminism and pushed the idea of recognizing and honoring and upholding women based off of our own physical ceilings and our own uniqueness, were doing literally the opposite of that. In the guise of inclusiveness, they were being exclusive to women and to the very female athletes who Title IX was created to protect. So I felt this sense of betrayal. I felt this sense of belittlement. It was this feeling of such that we didn't matter, that our feelings, that our dignity, that our safety, our privacy in that locker room, our fairness, our equal opportunities, none of that mattered. What mattered to them were the feelings of one. The feelings of one male. That was way more important than any of our feelings. So that's why I say it felt like belittlement. It felt, in regards to the locker room aspect of it, which is a whole different, that to me, I'll kind of touch on that and what that looked like. First of all,
that was our next question, actually. So we were wondering how that went.
Well, I'm getting ahead of you because
go ahead. We want to hear about that.
I think it's so important to talk about because I think a lot of people don't realize what this looked like from our perspective. So I'll be totally frank here. First of all, we knew, of course, we would be competing with Leah Thomas. The guidelines for the competition were simply 12 months of hormone suppressants, which they didn't check your levels. They didn't check that you had actually done 12 months. They trusted your word that you'd done 12 months of hormone suppressants, which we know is not enough to mitigate male advantage by any means.
Well, let's just talk about the arm breadth. Let's talk about lung capacity. I mean, there's just things that even you can minimize the testosterone, but you're not going to change his physical advantages that he has.
No, absolutely not. And so we knew what the competition would look like, but we had no idea what the locker room piece would look like. And so the only time we became aware of this was when we were undressing in this locker room next to a 6'4", 22-year-old man who was also undressing in this locker room, fully intact with an exposing male genitalia. And so I'll kind of set the scene. The swimming locker room is not a place of modesty. These suits that you put on, they're teeny tiny. It takes about 15 minutes to really poke and prod all your skin and rolls into this suit. 15 minutes of which you're fully exposed. But growing up being a swimmer, you almost become comfortable being vulnerable in this environment because you're all in the same boat. But I can't even tell you the innate feeling, the innate need to cover yourself, to hide yourself when someone of the opposite sex walks in, drops his clothes, and is exposing male genitalia, which is another reason why I say it felt like betrayal. Suddenly, our consent, it wasn't needed to allow a man to see us undressing. Actually, if you wanted to provide your consent, that just makes you a bigot and you should apologize, which is really the route they took. I immediately left that locker room when I saw this with my own eyes, and I went up to one of the officials on the pool deck and I said, how is this allowed to happen? How is a man allowed to be in our locker room? And so nonchalantly, he said, oh, well, we just made the locker rooms unisex, so it's not really that big of a deal. And so I'm sitting there thinking, and I'm like, okay, unisex? So any man, any coach, any parent, any official, any pervert who wanted to be in that locker room had full access to it and could have been. In bare minimum, we weren't forewarned about this. It's awkward, it's embarrassing, it's uncomfortable, but really the word for it is traumatizing. And you were asking me how I felt. It really was traumatic, not just for me, but for every girl who was in that space. It was just this feeling of 2 years ago, 3 years ago, if a man walks into a woman's locker room, they're immediately arrested and charged with voyeurism, and indecent exposure. I mean, the list goes on, but now that it's almost as if it was being encouraged. It was being celebrated that this man was in our locker room. So that was wild.
Your teammates, they had a similar response to you. And what about parents that knew this was going on, or spectators that would be in support of your side? Just, they didn't listen? What was going on there?
Yeah. I immediately called my dad, which my dad, he was a former NFL football player, a very big guy. And when I told my dad this meet, it was in Atlanta at Georgia Tech, and my parents were there watching. When I told my dad, Dad, this man is in our locker room. He said, Riley, I'm coming down there and I'm going to handle this myself. And I said, Dad, you can't. We already have one man in the locker room. We don't need two. But that was the general consensus from the parents as well. It just felt as if no one knew how or who to talk to this about. We as swimmers, we could talk to our coaches, but it was almost as if they couldn't do anything. There was nothing that seemed like it could be done. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know who to talk to. So what we ended up doing is just talking amongst ourselves in whispers. We were all walking on eggshells. We all felt the same. And it was obvious based off of the extreme discomfort in that room. And now based off of the conversations I've had confirming that every girl on all of these teams, we knew this was wrong. It's just we had no idea what to do to combat it.
So I wanted to ask about that. So going forward, is that still the rule? It's unisex locker rooms, even after this traumatic, victimizing experience?
I believe so. Especially at the collegiate level, I can't speak to a lot of the grassroots events going on at the high school and middle school level, but at the collegiate level, what the Biden administration is actively working towards now is there will be no sex-based protections. They are obviously trying to rewrite Title IX. Title IX is the federal civil rights law that stops discrimination on the basis of sex. They are trying to stop discrimination on the basis of gender identity, which is what their new proposed rule does. So what this means is men could join sororities. Men would have full access to not just sporting locker rooms, but all bathrooms on campus. Men could live in dorm rooms with women. And there's nothing you could do about it. Actually, if you were to come out and complain, feeling uncomfortable being, housed with a male as a female, then you're guilty of sexual harassment. That's what it says in their new rewrite. If you misgender a trans-identifying individual, then you're guilty of sexual harassment. Not the individual such as Leah Thomas, who's parading around our locker room with the opposite genitalia exposed. That's not sexual harassment. But if you call a spade, you're guilty.
My follow-up there would be, did you have any contact with Leah Thomas? Like, did he say anything to you, or just acted like business as usual, walked in a lot like she owned it? I just was curious about that.
Yeah, no, we had brief conversation after our race, but nothing of substance. And afterwards, since all of this, hasn't once reached out to myself, hasn't once tried to apologize for completely infringing upon our rights. Actually, Thomas has come out and doubled down and basically tried to mansplain what it means to be a feminist. Thomas has said that
that podcast. I just saw that.
Doing the activism I'm doing and claiming it's fighting for women is disingenuous, and he continues to call women fighting for women's sex-based protections bigots. So yeah, Thomas has doubled down. Thomas even came out in an interview and said that he would do whatever it took to take an Olympic spot away from the women, which there's only 2 spots for women, and he would be willing to take one of those.
That's going to be interesting to watch. And I had also read that you contacted Charlie Baker and Emmerich Mark, one was a former NCAA president and one is the current. And how did they respond to your requests for help on this?
President Charlie Baker has not. I've reached out many times through letter, through email, through public attention, trying to grasp some response, and I have gotten none. The president at the time, Mark Emmert, who has now stepped down, it's so interesting because after this whole debacle and the next few days after this all happened, he released a statement saying he unequivocally stood in his decision to allow Leah Thomas to swim with the women because it was based in evolving science. Yet, when I saw him in real life at this NCAA convention where I was nominated for NCAA Woman of the Year, which is the most prestigious honor for female athletes, to which Leah Thomas was also nominated for NCAA Woman of the Year. I was at this convention in San Antonio where I was able to have conversations with athletic directors, to which every single one said they completely support and agree with me. Every single one. I even talked to President Mark Emmert himself, and he said, keep fighting, keep doing what you're doing. It's keep doing what you're doing, which blew my mind because he is the one we're fighting. He can publicly double down on his stance, but privately, he knows it's wrong. He knows it's immoral. He knows it's unethical, and he knows it's unfair. Yet he chooses to throw his moral compass and what's right out of the window to appear virtuous.
And the word that comes to mind is coward.
Well,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Coward. He's being a coward.
Hypocritical is the word that comes to my mind. I mean, he's just trying to toe the line. And let's be honest, at the end of the day, this is all about the love of money. I mean, it's just at the root of all of it. And how sad and disturbing at such a guttural level that people will sell their souls for the green dollar bill, and I had heard you talk about even like Target and some of these companies, they're not for red or blue, but they're for green, and they're chasing after the green.
That's
and
such a good point. And the NCAA has become such a machine over the years. I mean, if you've watched it grow over the years with all the endorsements, and it's all about the money. I'm not sure where the student fits in there much anymore. I'm happy to hear that these ADs across the country were supporting you, but what a shame that the NCAA person that should be standing up for you is being a coward. Call him out.
Totally. Well, these athletic directors are too.
Yeah, they really are.
What happened was at this convention, they had a big room where companies could buy booths and talk to these athletic directors. And so I applied to buy a booth out of my own pocket. It was about $2,000. And I was like, I'll buy a booth. I have to get in front of them. They can't continue ignoring us. And so I applied with my name, Riley Gaines, which I had been outspoken at this point. And I was denied a booth. So I applied again and I was denied. And then I came up with an alias, and the NCAA was like, of course we'll take your money. And so I got a booth inside this convention center. And I was passing out pamphlets on Title IX and little bracelets and just sharing my story to all of these athletic directors. And the first 60 or so who walked by and were so grateful. I was so honored. I was so humbled. I was like, this is great. They're on our side. But as it continued, I very quickly began to feel frustrated which naturally, if we're all in agreement, then where's the discrepancy? I still don't understand where this driving force is coming from when the overwhelming majority of people, especially the people in the positions to make changes, agree with what I'm fighting for. And I started asking them, okay, I'm grateful you agree privately, but would you be willing to say so publicly? And every single athletic director, very quickly, their tones changed. They said, oh, no, we can't have a lawsuit. This is my job. I have a family to feed. I'm sorry. I'm the breadwinner of my family. I just can't. And very quickly turned and walked away from me.
And let me just tell you that fight that we're fighting now is just the beginning. This is not going away. I mean, it's just, you let biological men in locker rooms, you let them compete. And, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, not only women's sports goes away, but this is going to have a ripple effect throughout our whole entire society.
Absolutely.
At large.
And then we're seeing it in churches too. I mean, where during COVID, and I know you do some work with Charlie Kirk, but Charlie Kirk has talked a lot about the churches. Where were they during COVID? And if we don't stand up now, we lose an opportunity that may not come back.
Well, and if you know history at all, you'll know in Nazi Germany, there were very few pastors who stood up, and, they just didn't want to mix, politics and religion and so on and so forth. And you see that didn't turn out very well for them. And I just pray that the battle you're fighting here, and then the battle that we had with COVID, I just pray that people are waking up and will no longer be afraid to stand up. And that leads me to my next question. I wanted to just say, Ephesians 6:12 says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." And, I wanted to ask you how your faith in Jesus has come into play with this particular battle.
It's been a really huge part of a lot of different things, one of which it's given me the confidence to continue moving forward. I've had to lean on prayer more times than ever in my life this past year. Which is, of course, kind of unfortunate that you really only resort to prayer when things are kind of going crazy. But I found that to be so true this past year. I've always been spiritual. I'm very fortunate that I have a strong family foundation, and my family, they raised me in the church. But this past year, I have been absolutely spiritually awakened. And just as you said, I've so clearly seen how our God works and how he moves. But I have so clearly seen the spiritual wickedness, Satan, and how he moves, and how he moves through people and corporations and academia and the media and so many different aspects of our life. And it's so easy to see. Take a step back and you really realize, how you mentioned Nazi Germany, if you take a step back, you see the breakdown of faith. You see the breakdown of family. You see the denying of objective truth. You see the silencing. You see the changing of the language. There's so many pieces that point us directly in that direction.
Well, even North Korea, they will not allow them to use certain words. And in fact, they have to use that torturous setting of, famine and starving to death. They call it paradise. And so they're changing. It's a war of narratives. Like Lara Logan is known to talk about that. Like it's a war of narratives. And so now we see it seeping into just our everyday culture.
Absolutely. And I so see that. It's taken some realization for me, especially at the beginning of all of this. Of course, it's natural that you receive backlash, and I knew what I was getting into. But the hardest comment for me to hear, or I guess for me to read, was people who would comment on my social media. Again, I'm openly a Christian, and so I have posts on my social media talking about my faith. And people would comment, you call yourself a Christian, but this is not what Christ would do. Our God loves all, which I'm reading this, and it was hard for me to hear, am I doing something that's not Christ-like? But because before anything, I want to live a Christ-like life. And so it took some realization, and again, back to prayer, to understand, of course, we have a God who loves all. We know we have a God who loves all, but we have a God who hates sin. Our God created man and woman, and our God doesn't make mistakes.
Right.
And I also realized that in Luke, God says, it's not the healthy who need the doctor, it's the sick.
That's right.
And I constantly keep that into perspective. I'm coming from a place of compassion in my heart. It's not coming from a place of hatred. My whole argument is centered around fairness. It's not centered around anti anything. It's just about doing what's right. And I wholeheartedly believe that telling the truth, the biblical truth, the biological reality, objective truth, is beneficial for everyone. And lying, it doesn't help anyone involved in this situation.
Well, Riley, you went into a deep, dark city that I would call, it's kind of been taken over by spiritual warfare, which was San Francisco, I know, just a few months ago. And I'd love for you to tell us about your experience at San Francisco University. I don't know if a lot of people know about what happened there.
Absolutely. So I went to San Francisco State University to speak on exactly what I'm talking to you guys about. How what we felt, what we faced, what we dealt with, how that was wrong, and how it infringed on our rights as women. Again, nothing hateful, nothing even opinionated, just sheerly my experience. But I was met with an ambush. After my speech, I was mobbed by students, by people in the community, hundreds of people. They rushed into the room. They turned the lights off. They ambushed me. They physically assaulted me. They held me for ransom for 3 hours. They demanded I paid them money if I wanted to leave. I guess they were under the notion that I got paid to be there from the university, which I did not. The university did not want me there. They did not pay me to be there. And so they said, if you're getting paid to be here, you have to pay us if you want to leave. And they held me for over 3 hours. I missed my flight home because I was stuck in this room. The police, they were terrified of this mob. The police did. I, of course, respect all law enforcement. But these officers, they were put in a position where they didn't want to be accused of being seen as anything other than an ally to this community. Therefore, they didn't properly do their job, which, again, is a terrifying scenario to be in, that even law enforcement, our justice system, won't do the right thing because they're fearful of retaliation.
So if you push back on that, are there any, I feel like you have a lawsuit there. You were traumatized, you were kidnapped and held for ransom in America, in the United States of America.
Yeah. No, yeah, there is legal action being taken place. After this whole scenario, their vice president of student affairs, Dr. Jamila Moore, sent an email out to their student body applauding the students' behavior, saying she was so proud of how brave their students reacted and how peaceful they were in dealing with someone so personally apparent as myself. Word for word.
Gaslighting.
It's just gaslighting and just a bold-faced lie.
Totally.
That's just, well, really just like the riots, with the fortunate death of George Floyd, but all the, they were saying that they were peaceful demonstrations and they were lighting the cities on fire. It's just,
that was not peaceful by any stretch.
Yeah. So Riley, what would you say, to some of the naysayers who say, that a trophy doesn't matter and that these biological men competing against women, that it's just not that big of a deal? What are the repercussions to women and female athletes when men start entering into their lane?
Right. First of all, I agree that the tangible object of a trophy, even in regards to Thomas and I tying, and they told me I didn't get to take the trophy home. Look, it wasn't about the trophy for me. It was about being absolutely sidelined to a man. And in 2023, we as women have the right to vote. We have the right to own land, all of those rights that we have, but we have to beg for privacy in our locker rooms. It seemed as if we had just traveled back in time, centuries, really. And that's my problem. There are so many, the arguments of the opposition, truthfully, they're kind of comical, one of which because they're oftentimes not coming from people who have ever played sports in their life. Therefore, they don't understand the value of playing sports and what that gives you outside of athletic achievements in terms of the lifelong characteristics that you develop because of your sport. These people, they don't get that. They think sports is about feelings and humanity, but I can promise you sports is about winning, especially at the level that I was competing at.
For sure.
I never once woke up at 4:30 in the morning and had my coach ask me, do you feel like doing this today? Is this something that you're okay with? That's not how that works. Something I often hear too is that it's a non-issue. It's not really happening. Why are we developing a solution to a problem that doesn't exist? And that could not be further from the truth. It's happening all sports, all levels, all divisions, all ages, all across the country. And truthfully, I could list off hundreds of examples to you off the top of my head. And I really mean that.
Yeah, I think we just read about in California,
yeah,
in the track program there was a girl who lost.
Oh, yeah.
That just happened recently. I just saw that.
Riley, I heard you comment on that. In fact,
I did. Yeah. No, I did. It's wild. And again, that's happening all over. And the third thing, it's a lot bigger than just sports, is what people are failing to realize. It's prisons. What's happening in prisons? You see these men who are convicted of child pornography, kidnapping, rape, who are getting into women's prisons by simply saying they are a woman, impregnating women. It's happening in sororities. What these girls at the University of Wyoming, who I've talked with at great lengths about all of this stuff, what they're dealing with is criminal. Again, the changing of our language, it's now offensive to use the term mother. All of this, there's so many pieces to this systemic erasure of women and blurring the lines of objective truth. And that's what this is about. The freedom of speech issue and what these universities are doing to their female athletes to try and silence them. It's so much bigger than just the trophy. It really is. Any man taking opportunities away from women in a women's division is wrong. And so I'm going to continue fighting for it.
Well, and I just thank you for pointing out this is criminal behavior that we're tolerating on so many levels. And I know you're doing so much to fight back, and we're so thankful for that. And I want to touch on, before we run out of time, a little bit. Tell us about what your future looks like. I know you've been working with House Republicans and also have heard from a few liberal Democrats, maybe not that are in the House of Representatives, but out in the country who are supporting you. I think a lot of people would like to hear about that, because, you know, we're always hoping for some good news. So I know there's about the Women's Bill of Rights and the Save Women's Sports Act. Could you speak on that?
Absolutely. So thus far, there have been 21 states who have passed some sort of legislation to protect women and girls in sports, K through 12. A lot of states, 16 of which, actually, I think 17 as of yesterday, with Alabama joining on, protecting the collegiate level as well. So great news, but we need more. We at least need majority of the country to have passed this legislation. I know it's wishful thinking to say we need 50 states, considering we have states such as California and New York and Massachusetts who won't, but we need more than half of the country too. And I'm certain that next legislative cycle that will get done. Again, at the federal level, I am doing everything I can to combat what the Biden administration is doing to Title IX. Recently, we had the Save Women's Sports Act introduced in the U.S. House of Representatives by Representative Greg Steube, who I've worked very closely with to get this passed in the House, which it passed, of course, falling entirely on party lines, which that to me broke my heart. That's when I realized that this issue has become politicized in a way that should never be. As polarizing as it is, every single Democrat, all 203 of them, voted no in protecting women and girls in sports. Crazy. We will see. I'm not hopeful with this administration in the White House, but hopefully in 2024 this will be curbed. The Women's Bill of Rights, this has been phenomenal. It's been a great success at the state level for sure, with Kansas being the first state to pass the Women's Bill of Rights. And what this is, it's a bill that defines the word woman. So it's no longer up for interpretation in law. Tennessee, which is my home state, we're having a big signing party on June 5th, alongside the governor and the AG and a lot of people who played a key role in this. Oklahoma will be passing it.
Yay.
Yes, which is huge news. They had some major stalling this cycle with some other issues going on. But we're hopeful. We'll see how that pans out. I'm still waiting for some more word on if this can get to the governor's desk, which I'm hopeful that it does. It needs to.
Can our people help with that? Or is there still a chance that we could
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's crucial to contact your state legislator and your state senator, knowing who leads your district, how you can get in contact, and letting them know that this is important and that this needs to get done. It really is crucial, and I hope time doesn't run out and it gets put into law as soon as possible to protect women, protect girls. Not just in sports, but all girls and all women.
Because all the spaces.
Totally.
What advice and encouragement would you give first to athletes, parents, and coaches who want to fight back against these policies that discriminate against women? And then also just to average moms and parents, what can we do also?
First and foremost, to understand that this is how the overwhelming majority of people feel. It's very easy to get caught up in the kind of lie that you are in the minority and feeling like women and girls should be protected, but you are not. Even the majority of the Democratic Party, thinks men and women's sports is wrong. And so knowing you're in the majority, and you'll have people who will stand alongside you and behind you and fighting for this, which I've realized without a doubt. Two is to not get discouraged. I get messages all the time from parents and female athletes who just feel so, as I mentioned, my feelings, they feel so belittled. They feel so worthless. They feel discouraged to the point where they don't even want to play their sport anymore. But we can't allow that to happen. We have to take back the public square. And by giving in, that's not how we're going to do that. How we're going to do that is by being bold, defending your daughters, teaching your sons masculinity. I think that's a really important piece. This conversation constantly gets centered around girls and women, but we need men to fight this too.
That's true. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So that's my advice for parents.
And really, as Christians and believers, Psalm 97:10 says, for those who love the Lord, you should hate evil. And you need to stand up and hate evil. I mean, it's scriptural. You can't just say you're a Christian and then just cower behind and not hate evil, or even pander and use the pronouns and things like that and think that you're being kind and loving. No, I mean, look what Jesus did. He turned over the tables. When he saw evil, he called it out and he hated. He loved the sinner, but he hated the sin. And, unfortunately, we are in a cultural war, and we're going to have to stand up and we're going to have to hate evil.
Yeah. I mean, all of this is spiritual. Mm-hmm. And I really love the call that you just had for the men and boys, because we do talk about women and all of this about Title IX, but that's a call to parents as raising boys and young men to take, pride in their masculinity. We want that. We want our men to be strong. We want them to lead families. So I'm very thankful for that, Riley. And we're also just so thankful for your time and what you're doing for our country, for men, for women, for everybody all across the country, and just being brave and, really being a leader, kind of a civil rights leader of our time. So I really appreciate, all the effort that you're going to, and we at Moms on a Mission want to join you in that. And so like Riley had suggested, reach out to your governors, reach out to your state reps and your U.S. House of Representatives. Find out who they are. Let them know about the Women's Bill of Rights. And Riley, what's the best way that our audience can stay in touch with you?
Absolutely. My Twitter is the best way. It's Riley_Gaines_. I constantly tried to post on my Twitter breaking stories, highlighting how certain politicians are reacting, whether it's good or bad. So people don't believe the lie that this is a non-issue and that it's not really happening, because again, that's couldn't be further from the truth.
Well, Riley, thank you for taking your time out of your life, putting dental school on hold and making that sacrifice to fight for truth and to fight for freedom. And thank you for not backing down and taking the easy way out and speaking the truth unapologetically. I know that's not easy, and we just want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And thank you for being a beacon of hope. I know you get the text messages pretty regularly, but we want to say thank you from Moms on a Mission too, for being a beacon of hope for women all across America. And you will absolutely go down in history for taking this courageous stand. I have no doubt in my mind, and that's an honor, I'm sure, for you. So we stand with you, and we thank you for joining us today.
And we want you to follow us. So let's get connected. Go to momsonamission.net. That's momsonamission.net. And if you have any questions, you want to email us, go to moms@momsonamission.net. We changed it, so I keep forgetting. Do I guess?
Yeah.
Moms@momsonamission.net. And please follow us on your favorite platform. Moms on a Mission is excited to partner with our friends at MyPillow. According to sleep experts and sleephealth.org, over 50 million Americans struggle to get a good night's rest. That's where MyPillow comes in. They make the best pillows, sheets, mattresses, and mattress toppers. Several years ago, I was having trouble falling and staying asleep due to neck and shoulder pain. Luckily, I heard an ad about MyPillow and decided to give it a try. After 3 or 4 days, I really began to feel a difference. I was sleeping better, and my neck and shoulders felt so much better. MyPillow really does help you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. Moms on a Mission wants you to get a great night's rest too. Go to mypillow.com right now and use the promo code MISSION for up to 66% off your purchase. MyPillow products are made in America and have a 60-day money-back guarantee and lifetime warranty. Remember, go to mypillow.com, put in the special code MISSION for your special Moms on a Mission discount. Thank you, and God bless.
Hey guys, it's Moms on a Mission here. Are you worried about your financial stability and protecting the money for which you work so hard? The problem is stock market volatility and inflation. You may be wondering what you can do to preserve your family's wealth. We at Moms on a Mission encourage you to reach out to our friend Andrew Sorcini with Beverly Hills Precious Metals. Andrew is the expert in educating you to help you find the right balance of gold and silver for your family portfolio. He made it so easy for me to add precious metals to my financial investments. I simply mailed a check to Beverly Hills Precious Metals and my silver showed up on my doorstep a few days later. It was so easy. Go to bh-pm.com to save a little money and tell them that Moms on a Mission sent you. That's bh-pm.com. Don't wait. Protect your wealth today by going to bh-pm.com and tell them that Moms on a Mission sent you. Hi everybody, it's Moms on a Mission here. Recent research from the CDC says that millions of Americans develop parasitic infections and symptoms often go unnoticed or are misdiagnosed.
Parasites are the cause of many health problems, such as anxiety, depression, chronic pain, fatigue, and unexplained digestive issues. We all need a common sense strategy to improve our health.
We at Moms on a Mission encourage you to reach out to our good friend, Dr. Jason Dean. Dr. Dean's Full Moon Protocol provides all-natural detoxification and fights inflammation. These supplements are made with 100% organic ingredients and are proven to kill parasites safely and effectively.
To order your Full Moon Protocol, go to bravetv.store/mission to save $20 off your first order. That's bravetv.store/mission. Order Full Moon Protocol and start killing those foreign invaders that have been keeping you sick. That's bravetv.store/mission to receive $20 off your first order.